Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today, and welcome to today's upload. Guys, it is Saturday, and that only means one thing. Saturday Nightmares live from upstate New York. That is our live stream. It is at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a lot of fun sharing experiences and theories. Friendships are forged in the community section. It is truly an amazing thing. Also, it is unlike any other cryptid paranormal research community live stream on YouTube. I can guarantee you that. We have just an amazing community, and it is all because of you guys, so I hope to see you there, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, a couple quick links before we get into the upload. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? All right, folks, have I got an absolutely just terrifying and tragic experience to share. Comes to us from an area that I am not familiar with at all, an area that I've never heard of, Campeche, Mexico. That is a kind of Mexican state located in the Yucatan Peninsula, just south of Yucatan. And many of you know, who have been with this channel for a while, I don't use Facebook. I don't use Messenger. I have it. I don't use it. I had been a member of some groups, and I was a member of one group that is no longer on Facebook anymore. And I noticed, along with a couple other people, that it seemed that there was some kind of infiltration going on. And that made me really leery. And then when the news came out that the government uses or monitors Facebook and Messenger, I was like, nah, no thanks. Even though Gmail is, just as accessible, I feel more comfortable with basic Gmail to communicate. Then I will steer you somewhere else if we need to, speak privately. I have a phone that I will use that is strictly no Wi-Fi connect. It's a phone number that I put minutes on once a month. When I use it, I turn it off, So 2017 is when this experience happened. And I'm going through my Messenger, and I needed to check on a subscriber who is sick, and I wanted to see if they were okay. And I noticed that there was a recent friend request and message acceptance or whatever, and it was like a couple of days ago. So I just clicked on it really quick. I don't know why I did, because normally I don't go on Messenger. I do, and it's a gentleman, and his name is Yuri, and I shot him a message. I accepted his friendship. I read his quick message for a request, and I shot him a message and said, listen, I don't like Messenger. Email me. We'll talk via email. And so about, I don't know, a couple hours later, I'm checking my emails and going through some stuff, and he emails me immediately. And by the way, Mike, I did get your email today. I will be reaching out to you within the next couple of days. So Yuri emails me immediately, and he said, you know, I live in Campeche, Mexico, and I am a Mennonite. And I was like, wait, what? You know, this is kind of weird. So I click on his Facebook quick, and sure enough, he's Caucasian Mennonite. He's blonde hair, blue eyes. His kids are blonde hair, right in Mexico. I had no idea that there is a large population of Mennonite in Mexico, Central America, and South America. Blew me away. Like, we're talking 700,000, I think, or something like that. Like, a lot of people. So I quick ask him, how are you communicating with me if you're a Mennonite? And then I looked through his Facebook, and I'm like, oh, he really is. Holy shit. So I said, listen, I'm looking at your Facebook right now. I don't know if I can, do you have a cell phone? You know, I don't know if I can connect with you via, my cell phone plan, but, you know, let's try it. Do you have a cell phone? Can I get in touch with you? And he just so happens to have a cell phone. Now, he's got a cell phone, and it is, it's actually, his area code is from the United States, because he has family that, you know, lives in the United States still, part of his, congregation, I guess you'd call it, family congregation, family members and fellow Mennonites. I'm not really familiar with the whole Mennonite thing. I know it's similar to Amish, just a lot less strict. And I didn't ask him, you know, because we had a whole bunch of different stuff to talk about. Now, we end up connecting, and long story short, we end up connecting. So Yuri is 42 years old. He has 3 kids, a wife, and they've lived in Mexico pretty much since Yuri was a kid. He does travel back and forth to visit family members and a Mennonite church that is in a different state. I'm leaving that undisclosed because of everything that's going on kind of right now with just, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, you know, like I don't want to get him in trouble he's an American, but I think he has dual citizenship. I believe that he said that. But I'm not really sure. So he goes back and forth, not all the time, but he's lived for something like 30 something years in Campeche, Mexico. His mom and dad are still alive. They still have a home in Campeche. His sister, you know, so there's a Mennonite community. There's a large Mennonite community all throughout Mexico. And I said, you know, so what's the deal? You know, what's going on in Mexico, you know? And I start to look at the surrounding area of it, and Campeche, it looks like kind of like a city, you know, it's right on the Gulf. It looks really nice, but once again, we are talking about a third world country where the cartel and the government aren't really, things aren't on the up and up, you know? So he and I start talking, and in 2017, this experience happened. Now, he lives off of an area, 180, heading north toward the Yucatan. So he's out of the city of Campeche. And of course, growing up in the area, he's heard of, Chupacabra, what is it? El Cuetlacas, which would be the Bigfoot, and I probably butchered that. And Hombre Lobo, Dogman, or werewolf. Now, there's a lot of legend and a lot of talk through, the communities. And his family, he and his family are pretty tech savvy. They have a TV, they have a computer, they have a smartphone. They're, I guess, pretty liberal, I guess it would be. There's just certain things that they don't do to honor the old customs. And apparently, the further south you go, there are some Mennonite that literally live like you and I, that, he's got electricity, he's got, so he's pretty in touch with the world. YouTube, obviously, and such, Facebook. So he's heard of all of these legends and all of these strange creatures. And his dad used to talk about the Chupacabra, and which I asked him, I said, well, I believe in my own research that North America has like this canine Chupacabra, which really looks like to me, looks like a thylacine that is very, sick, emaciated, and, with mange, because those jaws open like a thylacine. And Forrest Gallant, he talks about the North American Chupacabra quite possibly being a thylacine, because there had been a boat in like 1930s or whatever that crashed in North Carolina with a breeding pair of thylacine. Apologize for that, Tigger. The channel mascot needed to get let out. So Forrest Gallant, he is a biologist, and his lineage, his mom and I believe his grandfather were all biologists as well. He's an adventurer. He likes to find extinct or possibly endangered species and kind of bring them to the forefront of our eyes so we can help save them. Now, he has found some cool stuff, but he really believes that the thylacine, the North American Chupacabra, is or was this breeding pair of thylacine that bred. So back to Yuri. Yuri's dad actually believes that he had seen the reptilian-like thylacine. It's a shorter, kind of reptilian-like creature, humanoid, meaning like arms, legs, but shorter, tail with spikes going down its back. Usually what I believe, anything that I've ever read, green color to its skin. And that would be the Central and South American Chupacabra. Puerto Rico, I believe, believes in that as well. Dominican Republic, I know, does. So, and it's the goat sucker. Now, apparently, Yuri's family are doing okay financially. They own a bakery, and it's a line of his parents started this bakery, and that's where his dad used to deliver baked goods, and apparently going up towards Yucatan, he had seen this strange creature come running out of the jungle and go across the street. And it looked what they call the chupacabra in that area. And it just shot across the street in front of him. He'd never seen it again after, and he's never seen anything that looked like it since then either. So he's always heard that story of, the chupacabra in the jungles. There is, things that we don't know about in these jungles. And he had been looking into some things. The reason why he contacted me was because he was looking for Bigfoot and Dogman related experiences in the Amish and Mennonite community. And I have 2 Amish people that reached out to me, one in New York, that had some crazy experiences. Actually, the person in New York was not Amish. It was his neighbor that shared that. Now, in 2017, Yuri and his wife and kids, he had 2 kids at that time, were, working and living the Mennonite way, just very comfortable in their life. It was a very routine, basically, a little different than what we do up here, but pretty similar. It's pretty interesting. I always thought that they were kind of like a little more advanced than the Amish, but definitely not like what we do, but he's got a computer, he's got a TV. So he's got a set of neighbors that live pretty close to him. The property that he lives on, his grandparents had owned. His parents were in America when he was born. His grandparents were down in Campeche, and they had bought this large kind of tract of land. And what their idea or their thing was is they were going to have Mennonite families kind of build their houses on this property and work together and have their church in the village or city of Campeche. But just kind of like a self-sufficient community of Mennonites, but different families, not all the same family, but living together. So Yuri has this, he's got his property, and this couple had been living next to Yuri for a couple years. The father's name was Joshua, and the mother's name was Emma. And they had 2 kids, 2 sons, Samuel and Jacob. Now, they were living there, and Yuri knew of them. Apparently, Yuri's wife was fairly good friends with Emma, or, associates. But Yuri being the child to take over his father and mother's business, the bakery, he's pretty much working and doing what his dad did when he was younger. So he actually still brings bread to other areas in this part of the peninsula. It's very interesting. And so he's not, he knew of him, he had met him a couple times, but they're not like best buds, they're neighbors, but, it's not, they're not playing horseshoes together and drinking beers like we do in America with our neighbors or whatnot, or have a neighbor war. They just knew, he knew of them. And his wife was very fond of his wife, Emma. Now, apparently, sometime in 2017, there had been a rash of sightings, people seeing things and seeing what they thought were people looking into their homes. And in this Mennonite area of this property that Yuri's grandparents had bought and built. So you've got, a few people complaining about seeing what they thought was a person looking into their home, random kind of noises on their outside of their walls and such. And it started to ramp up a little bit, and at first they thought that it may be like kids from the city of Campeche, just being kids, or men, drunk men, whatever. But the Mennonite community and the Mexican community, there is no kind of conflict. There's literally, they live side by side. They work, together. They exist. They coexist with any kind of, they live in pretty harmonious. And so it was kind of like, thought maybe it's kids, and then it starts to ramp up. And one lady had claimed that she had seen these red eyes staring at her through her windows. And of course, you have red eyes, you have religious people, very religious people, and they immediately think demons. So that's the next step, the next kind of evolution in this experience that happens to this small community. And there are other Mennonite families that live in and around this area in Campeche. But this is like a land, a bunch of acreage. So you've got like 20 different houses, all on 1 to 3, ranging in 1 to 3 acres, maybe a little more, all, living in, once again, harmoniously. All as a community, not all family members. Now, of course, they start to immediately, a few are in fear, and then a few are like, oh, maybe she's just imagining that they were red eyes. Her, she's crazy, because now they are still thinking these are kids messing around, local kids just kind of dicking off and being kids. And then some damage starts happening. There's some property damage, some like claw marks are being found in some on sides of barns. Some horses had been found torn apart, decapitated. The strangest one was there was a donkey that it looked like it had been just literally, its body had been pulled and its head and spinal cord were located on one side and its body was located on the other, which is a tremendous amount of strength. And a human cannot do that, that's it, whoop, pulled it right out. It's, to me, I immediately, if I ever saw anything like that, my first thought would be, I would be leaning toward alien or, interdimensional something. They had no idea, they're kind of terrified. This isn't kids now. This is something completely different. And this is their, these are their animals. This is their livelihoods. Some people use donkeys to travel with, they'll like Yuri's grandfather and dad and stuff. They would travel in a, kind of wagon pulled by donkeys or horses, so this is livelihood. Then it started to progress to getting a little more daring. People would start to find their dogs literally on their porches of their home, torn apart and not consumed. That was the thing. They started to think, well, maybe Maybe it's some sort of local wolf. The maned wolf, I think, is the largest wolf that is in existence in the Mexico region. Very seldom seen and very strange looking. But, they're trying to come up with these ideas of what this is, because now, it's ramped up to where, oh, it's kids. Oh, it was a demon. No, that lady's crazy. And now you're finding, decapitated animals, horses, donkeys, and shredded dogs. It's not like in the United States to where, all right, guys, let's call the local sheriff or the state police. No, this is Mexico, and there is police presence, but it's not like how it is here. They did report it, but there wasn't, it was kind of like, whatever. And at that point, even though the Mexican community and the Mennonite community do live pretty good together, is when the police were notified, and it kind of got brushed off, that's your business. You handle your business. That has nothing to do with us. So that kind of set everything in motion of, we are on our own. We need to figure out what's going on, because it's progressively getting worse. When is it going to be a human? And then it stops. It stops. And then a couple of months later, it's quiet for a couple months. Just no attacks, no sightings of eyes looking in, nothing. And all of a sudden, one day, Yuri is at his father and mother's shop, and his wife walks in and says to Yuri, Joshua and Emma's oldest son is missing. Samuel is missing, and he hasn't been seen apparently since last night. And so now, he's like, well, maybe he ran away. Maybe he met a girl. All this kind of, maybe he just, Mennonite community wasn't for him. I don't know him. Yuri's like, I don't know him. I know of him, but, and his wife is like, no. He's very committed to his family. He would never run away. He's very loyal to his family, his mom, dad, and his brother, because it was the four of them. And so they are now aware of this young man gone missing. And a couple of days go by, and they wait a couple of days. The family, the mother and father, wait a couple of days, and then they notify law enforcement. And some law enforcement come out and they, make a display of being there. And they talk to a few people, and, maybe he ran away. Chances are he ran away. He's probably in the city, who knows? Yuri, at this point, makes a statement to his wife and says, how well do we know these people? What if, the son is, we don't know them well enough. What if the son is, he's 17 years old. What if he met somebody in the city and is now working with the cartel, transporting stuff for them? And his wife immediately is like, no, and just dismisses it. Just really, no, That's not who these people are. And that was immediately what started to go around the little community. Maybe he is. And sure enough, in small communities, the mom and dad, Joshua and Emma, hear it. And they're hurt, but they're upset too. They're kind of like, hey, you know us, or of us, like in Yuri's case, he didn't know a lot of the people. He was constantly working. And when he got home and did stuff, he did it with his family. He wasn't very communal, I guess would be the best word. He's very inward to himself and his business and his wife and kids. But there's now a little bit of like, well, maybe it wasn't, we should kind of give him a break, yada, yada. And they end up, like 2 or 3 days after the police come out, the police show up and said, we found a body, we found a Caucasian teenager, and he was found on 180 heading into the city, but there's, jungle all around this area. We have him. Can you come and identify him? And they do. They're warned, hey, prior to, we have to tell you that it's not good. It looks like he had been attacked by a wild animal. The family go and identify him, and he was attacked. Law enforcement immediately say, we think it was a jaguar, because of the large claw marks, the bite marks, and there's little to no consumption. So we think that, he was just attacked by a jaguar. Maybe a mother jaguar with cubs or kittens or whatever they're called. But nonetheless, that's what we think he was attacked by. And, that's what we're gonna list this as. It's strange because immediately when Yuri told me that, it was so dismissive of the local police. I thought about the Christopher Whiteley case, where Lipe in Texas, one branch of the government said, well, the sheriff's department said he was attacked by a mountain lion, and Department of Environmental Conservation states no, he was not attacked by a mountain lion. We don't know. We can't identify these wounds. Immediately, that's what I thought about. I was like, damn. And of course, there's not a lot of effort put into it's wrapped up right there, That's what we think, and that's how we're gonna label this, and it is unfortunate, because I think that if this happened in America, that at least there would have been a little better of an investigation. It would have been covered up, sure as shit, but maybe not. I look at Christopher Whiteley, Amber Miller, Tony Aarons, Brenda Hamilton, Dr. Nancy Shaw. So probably not. And so they now are talking about how there is this jaguar. And then some people start saying, hey, maybe that's what the lady saw. And maybe that's what was peeking in people's windows, tearing apart our animals and this and that. And immediately everyone in the community is kind of on edge. There's a jaguar lurking around, and a few of the older Mennonite men in the community, Yuri's dad and a few of his friends, start to say, no, definitely not. A jaguar would not, have the power to do what happened to that donkey. It most certainly would not go onto someone's porch and attack their dogs. It just wouldn't be so brave and brazen to do something like that. And the father, Joshua, starts to talk about how it looked like these claw marks were far apart. They didn't look like how a cat's paw would look. He said it was very spread out and almost looked like, fingers, if they were spread out and just thrashed on something. So everything is just really kind of going bizarre and berserk. Nobody's trusting anybody, and everybody's very leery of everything. So at this point, the community kind of starts to not shun, but pull away from the family, Joshua and Emma, and their remaining child, Jacob. And I guess his wife, Yuri's wife, still talked to Emma, because they were friends. And she had said something like, how would his body be all the way to where it was found? He wouldn't have run away. He wouldn't have walked that night, first of all. He was, something must have happened to him here. And whatever happened to him, if it was that jaguar, would have had to have dragged him all that way. How could it be so strong? How could, without waking anyone up? And why would he be outside? Why would he go outside? And that's when the son, Jacob, kind of says that he had gone outside one night he heard the dog outside growling, and he had gone outside to bring the dog inside secretly. Like, these dogs stayed outside in this community, and he didn't want their family dog to get hurt, so he had gone outside. And Jacob had been awake when he had gone outside, but he must have fallen asleep during that period of time, because when he woke up the next morning, his brother Samuel was gone. So now you have, okay, well, he was just going to let the dog in, and something took him from our porch or our yard. And they're now really, really terrified. They're not letting their other son kind of anywhere. He's stuck inside the house. And all one night, Yuri is on his way home, and he's pulling into his driveway, kind of not a car driveway, but they use a buggy. He actually still uses a buggy, which is crazy because he's got a cell phone and he's got electricity, but whatever. So he's pulling into his home, and he thought he saw a large shadow kind of go between his house and the house on the opposite side of him. And there's a large white kind of fence, not a picket fence, but a like large wood, not pallet wood, but almost like clapboard wood, just a big, large fence. And almost like you'd see in a corral, made out of like, what would it be, like 1x8s, something like that. And so he just sees this kind of shadow, and he's kind of like, huh, what's that? He puts his horses into his barn, checks on everything, kind of does his routine at night, and goes inside. He's sitting, relaxing, talking to his wife about the day, and planning on his routine for tomorrow. He's got to tomorrow go into Yucatan. He's got to go into there and for some deliveries and such. And he was going to bring his eldest son. And his wife was kind of, is he old enough to do that with you yet? And, he's something like 15, 16 at the time. Yeah, he's perfect. Let's, get him introduced to the family business now. He's the right age. And they hear just this loud scream, just this ungodly, terrifying scream. And they kind of just immediately are quiet. They just really, him and his wife are looking at each other like, what was that? Because they're in their house, they're having a conversation. And it came from this community somewhere, but it was, this shriek of terror that's so loud that their sons and daughter came running down the stairs, because they have 2 kids, 2 sons and 1 daughter. They came running downstairs thinking that it was their mom. That's how loud it was. Yuri looks at his wife and says, stay inside. I want to go and see. He goes out onto his back porch, and he's kind of waiting to hear any kind of scream, a noise, and see where it came from. And he hears people talking. And one of his neighbors that he grew up with yells to him, "Hey, are you okay? Yuri, are you okay? Is your wife okay? What was that noise?" And he responds, "I don't know." And then you hear this kind of a male kind of grunt and a loud, not a scream, but almost a wail, like a sad cry, but just super loud. Like, like if someone comes upon what Joshua came upon, his family dead. The men from the 2 guys that are walking up to Yuri's, all 3 start running towards where that noise, that wail came from. And they get to Joshua's house, and Joshua is standing in the yard, and they can see shadows. They can see, it's dark, but you can see Joshua's shadow, and what's, going on. It's not bright, it's dark, but there's still lights and stuff. And they yell to Joshua, "Are you okay?" And he turns to look at them, and he says, my family is dead. My family is dead. It killed my family." And they run over, and his wife is just, it's unimaginable what this thing did to her. It almost resembled what Amber Miller, her arms were like. Put it this way, if a human got ragdolled by something that has claws and sharp teeth, that's what this poor woman looked like. Just literally her arms, legs just kind of hanging, her torso ripped open. Just a really horrific sight. And then they look at Joshua. One of the men grabs him and says, come with us. And Yuri looks at Joshua and says, where's your son? Where's Jacob? Where's your son? And he points, and there's a kind of grouping of trees. And he said, I saw it drag him that way. And he looks at him and he says, the jaguar? And he shakes his head. And he says, no, it was the hombre lobos. And he's like, werewolf? Like in disbelief, werewolf? And he's put off. He's scared, like you literally see a woman torn apart, and he tells you that I just saw a werewolf take my son in this grouping of trees, set off in the darkest part of the yard. And one of the other guys says, Yuri, wait. And he runs to his house, and he comes back, a couple minutes later, and he's got a shotgun with him, and he hands Yuri a rifle. Yuri doesn't know the caliber of the rifle, but it's a rifle nonetheless. And, do you know how to shoot this? Yes. He said, all right, let's go over. And they walk over to this grouping of trees. They're very quiet. They're looking kind of at the ground, looking around just to see, half expecting it to come from like behind some trees or something. And his friend walks in. Yuri's right behind him. And he stops and he turns and he looks up, his friend, and he looks up. And the boy is dangling from the tree. He's almost stretched. Yuri said that it looked almost like his body had been almost like if you had pulled a slinky too far. And he said there was, obviously skin was torn. His insides were on the outside. And he didn't say slinky. He said spring-like toy, and it just stretched. And hanging from this couple of branches, he was kind of like, almost like it tried to climb the tree with him or whatever. And he had gotten caught up in the branches or something. The kid's legs had gotten caught up in the branches, and he just kept pulling. And so they get him down, and they bring him over to the house. As they're walking, they're carrying this poor kid. He's, they're holding him as best as they can together. And they hear this growl probably 30 feet from behind them in that grouping of trees that they were just in. And Yuri turns and looks because they can hear it. And he immediately, guys both just see these just red glowing eyes staring at them. And it's just, growling. You can hear the growl and you can see the eyes, and they're about a little shorter in height than Yuri and this man standing. So it's a very large, because it was standing quadruped, very large Dogman. The thing that Yuri said, he said, I wished to God that we could have done something different at that moment, but the fear had overwhelmed both of us and our desire to live, and we dropped the boy. He was already dead, but they dropped him and they ran away from this. They both had a shotgun and a rifle, but and they get to about where the porch would be, and they turn around, and they watched this thing just run up and grab the body, and it took off. It looked like it had got him. It got the legs first, because as it ran back, and they watched it. They could see the eyes as it ran. It ran past that section of trees, and they saw something tumble, and it was the upper part of the torso. They ran a minute after they had watched this thing run away. They ran and grabbed it, the torso, and brought it back. And so then the whole village or community is just in hysterics right now. The father is just, you cannot calm him down. He just witnessed this whole traumatic everything, his whole family. He loses his son 2 days prior that was at his own home, and now his wife and his youngest son. So he's inconsolable. He's just a wreck. And they kind of figure out, what are we going to do? They contact Yuri's dad. Yuri's dad gets an elder, and they wrap the bodies and do their traditional remembrance and stuff. But there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of gore. So it was much different than someone passing away in their home. So the elders and a few of the women, the elder women, come in and take care of all of the, the remains in their proper way. And like I said, it's not like someone passing away in their bed or someone being sick or old. That's what this community is used to. They still hadn't brought in their son from the police station back yet to remember him, because they had, for some reason, had kept that. Even though there was no investigation, they immediately called it, the Jaguar had done it. The next morning, law enforcement comes out and talks to the father, Joshua, talks to a few of the locals, and Yuri is, once again, he's doing his job. He's going up to the Yucatan area to deliver bread and stuff and baked goods and stuff. That's what his family does. It's just how he supports his family. So he cannot be there that day. But his wife, everyone had gotten kind of questioned that had been there. And they had said, this is what we saw. And the one guy that was with Yuri that witnessed the dragging of this poor boy. As it ran away, the police ended up saying that you were mistaken, that they ended up accusing the father of working with Los Zetas, and that he must have been smuggling drugs for them, that their son had been attacked by, a jaguar, but that must have been, you must have did something to upset the Los Zetas, and they came for retaliation. And what everyone saw, what Yuri and Joshua and those two other men saw was a human. Their brain played a trick on them, nonetheless, knowing full well that these men are, not in the cartel or working with the cartel. Apparently some have and some still do, and they get in big trouble for it when they get caught. But it's not something that they're going to do, and it's definitely not what Joshua was doing. So they immediately bring him to the police station and question him for nearly an entire day, right after, his whole family had been wiped out. And they just, that's how that read out in the local newspapers and articles and such, that Mennonite family massacred by Los Zetas, another cartel death and such, and wrote it off. Now, what Yuri's wife saw when she had given Yuri's statement, because Yuri never gave a statement because he was gone, and they never came back to even ask. But when she said what her husband had seen, the police officer that interviewed her and talked to her, his eyes said everything she needed to know, that they were well aware of these creatures being running around through this area, that it was nothing new to law enforcement, but they have to keep the rest of the public quiet, sane and safe and stuff. So let's just lie like our government does. And that's so a day later, whatever, Joshua gets help from this community, and he ends up burying his family in a traditional cemetery. And shortly there, he moves back to the United States. Yuri's never heard from him. He didn't expect to, apparently one of the other Mennonite locals has, but he's never going to come back to this area. He's officially just, how do you go back to a normal life once that happened to him? You don't, So, like 6 or 7 days later, there's a knock at Yuri's door. And it's the other Mennonite. And he says, someone shot that thing. Someone shot it. And it's not dead, but we shot it and we know where it is. Do you want to come help us? Yuri kind of, not his normal kind of jump up to the game and let's do it, but because of what he witnessed, he immediately said yes, because now he's thinking about his daughter. He said, I said yes because What if my daughter, what if my 2 sons, what if my wife is next? Of course I want to help. Of course I do. And this is not something from God. This is something from the devil. This is pure evil. So they go towards, they head towards the city, towards where Joshua's other son had been attacked. And there's a couple of Mennonite men, and 2 of these guys they had a truck, like a beat up old kind of pickup truck. And 2 of these guys are standing in the back of the truck, and they've got a flashlight spotted in this tree. And periodically you would see a glint of red eyes and like a loud growl. They start to shoot into the trees at it. It jumps down out of the tree, lands on the hood of the truck. You got 2 of the men that are sitting in the bed of the truck. Yuri and this other guy are sitting on the side, not sitting, but standing on the side as it lands in front of all 4 of these men. And it lets out this just roar, just this tremendous. Yuri said, I felt it. He said, I felt it in my chest. He said, and I felt just the instant I heard that roar, he said, I felt just this extreme kind of sadness and depression and terror all in one. He said this roar was just traumatic. It was just this fucking loud but painful. And he said it. He said, I felt depression, but I felt afraid too. And it jumped as it roared. It jumped and landed quadruped on the other side of the truck and started to run towards the Gulf. There's a large tract of land, but it's not running. It had run across 180 and started to run into the jungle going that way. And the 2 guys that are on the bed of the truck, they just took a couple shots at it. Yuri and his buddy are kind of frozen. He's in shock at what he felt. He just felt this. He said, it was a sadness and a depression feeling that I had never felt. He said, I never felt anything so haunting that, he said, I felt so bad for Joshua. He said, but that feeling that creature, when it roared like that, he said, I will never forget how I felt. It was almost like when it roared, it shot this energy into us, because they all felt something different, but they all did feel like an overwhelming sadness. It proceeded to run into this jungle. And since that day, there had been periodic sightings of it, walking along like wood lines of this kind of little area of community. And it is jungle lines, you've got jungle all around you, but it'd be walking along, but it would never come into the community again. Yuri will not allow any of his kids, this is 8 years ago. His kids were, now they're almost adults, all of them, but at that point, he said, my kids were mad because they had forgotten about that night years later. And I still wouldn't, let them go anywhere alone or unaccompanied. Even though, if I was walking with them or bringing them somewhere or playing with them, that I wouldn't have been able to. If it wanted to, it could have gotten all 4 of us, like it did that family. since then, it's just been periodic sightings of it, but nothing as of major. And as time went on, it got less and less. And he said, I always wondered if anyone, Mennonite or Amish, had ever heard of anything, or had an experience like that. And he's heard a few other Amish experiences, Bigfoot ones mainly. But he wanted to, see how and what these people did to overcome all of that fear and sadness that had arrived from this experience. And that's when he started to go on YouTube and look and on Google and type it in. And he came across my channel. He'd been listening to, I think it's A&E or whatever, Discovery, with Destination Unknown. Josh Gates talks about it. He listened to that. Listen to other, not community like me, Dark Waters, How to Hunt, Vitcondiff, not anything like what we are sharing, but kind of like that mainstream media, I guess you'd say, cryptid, which I don't trust, and then he sure enough found those two and asked, how both of them sounded when they shared. And I said, well, on the first one in New York, no, he didn't. I never spoke with him. And, I said, I might be able to put you in touch with the other fella. And he said, if you could, I'd love that. It's interesting to talk to him too, because he, even living in Mexico for 30 something years, he had this almost like a German dialect to his tone and stuff. Very old world Dutch, really nice guy though. Really nice guy. And just a tragic experience. I could never imagine, how Joshua dealt with that. It's just, I couldn't. Your whole family just got wiped out in a safe community and then law enforcement blames you and says, you work with this, you work with the cartel. It's unbelievable. It's fucking sad is what it is. All right, folks, so this is part 2 to yesterday's upload, where Dogman attacked a Mennonite family in Mexico, Campeche, Mexico, which is on the Yucatan Peninsula. And if you hadn't heard that upload, please go back and check that out first. I have an update on something that I want to share with you before we jump into this upload that is just by far a puzzle connector. And I actually ended up talking to Yuri again and his friend Leo, who is Mexican, lives on the Yucatan Peninsula. Actually, he works and has been affiliated with the Mennonite congregation down there. I guess he would be considered a Mennonite if Mexicans can become Mennonites. I'm not really sure how that works. That was actually a conversation that we had, and I kind of baffled Yuri, and he's a funny, for being someone so close to like the Amish in their ways and culture. He is definitely just, I can't even explain. I cannot not explain. I laugh thinking about our conversations. I actually told Isabel how nuts he is. So I ended up speaking to Leo Cato, which is his first name, and sorry about that. Leo, we'll just call him Leo, but his real name is Leo Cato. It's an old Mexican name. He's named after like his great grandfather and his great great grandfather. But I wanted to share with you guys an update out of Quaidville, Ontario, because something very strange has gone on with that case. And I feel for the family and for the little girl, but I'm not sure how any of this can really be on the level. And you will see why. All right, so back in June 23rd, there was a very strange disappearance, missing person, and animal attack. The young girl was clinging to life when she was found. And there were experts brought in trying to figure out what kind of animal had done this. And, well, the update is shocking because I like I said, I don't know. I feel for the family terribly and for that little girl. But the outcome or the information, the newest information to me is very strange. And I don't know if it's on the level. I can't make sense of it. So, June 23rd, residents of a small village. This is the news article on the 24th, the day she was found. So she had disappeared. She was last seen at 6 p.m. on the 23rd, a Monday. Found at midnight or 12:30, somewhere around there, Tuesday morning. So gone 6.5 hours. And this area called Quaidville is very isolated. It's very woodsy. Dirt roads, just, houses few and far between. Small village. Residents of a small village in the rural eastern Ontario are reacting with uncertainty and concern after a young girl was found seriously injured in their community under circumstances that remain unclear. On Tuesday, Ontario Provincial Police warned residents of Quaidville, a village located about 60 kilometers southwest of Renfrew, to keep their children indoors and under close supervision following an overnight incident that left an 8-year-old girl clinging to life. Though this appears to be an isolated incident, investigators are still working to determine the cause of the child's injuries, the police force said Tuesday on social media. Jordan Genrick, chief of Brudnell and Lindick and Reglin Fire Department, told CBC on Tuesday afternoon that the firefighters helped the OPP officers remove the injured girl from the woods in Quaidville around 8 or 12:30 a.m. Tuesday. An area of forest behind home located on Quaidville Road Quaidville Road was blocked off by police tape. Renfrew County paramedics confirmed to CBC that they provided care to the child but did not elaborate the nature of her injuries. OPP said the child remains in the hospital and working with medical officials as a part of the investigation. They warned parents to keep their children indoors and under close watch until the source of the victim's injuries can be determined. We honestly don't know what the source of the injuries are, OPP spokesperson Bill Dickinson said. Patient Transport Service, ORNIG, said in an email Tuesday afternoon they took a child patient to a child's hospital in Ottawa with critical injuries relating to an animal attack.
Child reported missing on Monday. OPP separately issued a missing person bulletin on Monday night with photos of the child who had last been seen at 6 p.m. at a grocery store in Quaidville. The missing child, who police said was 8 years old, was later found. Local fire department said on social media, in the light of the recent events in Quaidville, it would not be participating in the local Canada Day festivals, including firework display planned for Saturday. Out of respect for the family, community, and our firefighters' mental health, we hope you understand, the fire department wrote. John Hodge, resident of Quaidville for the last 2 years, lives in a wooded area police had coordinated off. He said OPP officers came to his home early Tuesday morning to ask about a young girl who had gone missing. Later on Tuesday, after the girl had been found, OPP came back to ask Hodge if he had spotted any wildlife in the area. Hopefully, she's going to be okay, and this was an isolated incident, he states. Other people who live in the area told CBC the police had been to their homes to ask if they have any pets or if they had seen any wildlife. They said locals have been searching for a missing child on Monday evening, and the police dogs eventually found her. Just terrible. I've been terrible all day, one resident said how she felt on Tuesday. We live in a rural spot. We don't expect stuff like this. Quaidville is part of Brudnell, Lindick, and Raglan townships in Renfrew County, at about 130 kilometers west of downtown Ottawa and 30 kilometers southeast of Barry's Bay. Township is 1,550 residents as of 2021. Now, about a week ago, there was a news article talking about how they were looking for an older gentleman on a motorcycle who possibly had seen the incident. And I had reported that. Here's the twist, and I truly feel terrible for this family and this young girl, but none of this makes any sense. This article was 2 days after the article that I shared about the older gentleman in his 30s to 40s, gray hair on a motorcycle, that may have witnessed this. So, a 17-year-old teen has been charged with attempted murder in SA with a weapon of a person under 16 in an attack on a child. Had additional suspected it was an animal, the OPP police say. An 8-year-old girl was reported missing on June 23rd in Quaidville, southeast of Barry's Bay, and about 170 kilometers away from Ottawa. She was found shortly after midnight, following morning with life-threatening injuries. At the time, police warned parents in this rural eastern Ontario town to keep the children indoors and supervised. Earlier evidence suggested an animal attack. In Ontario Provincial Police said Wednesday in this media, while the incident is still under investigation, recent testing of samples taken from the victim's wound has now revealed no trace of animal DNA. Police say the 17-year-old suspect, who cannot be legally identified because he is a minor, was arrested and charged on Tuesday and remains in custody. Police scheduled a town meeting for Saturday, July 12th. The Eastern Ontario community of Quaidville is reeling after Ontario Provincial Police revealed they charged a 17-year-old boy with a horrific attempted murder in SA of an 8-year-old that police initially believed was an animal attack. So I don't know how to even think about this. I want to keep people updated on the cases that I discuss on the channel, and when they pop in and look real strange. I don't know, and I'm not going to even speculate or make any assumptions. I'm not even going to talk about this case anymore because I don't know how they could ever mistake. This girl was clinging to life savagely, like so bad that they thought, this was an animal attack. Well, an animal attack looks very different than a human attack, and that's all I will say. I don't even know. I don't know. I pray for that little girl, and I pray for her mom and dad and the rest of her family, because it's either way, it's horrific. And I might look and see what else occurs in this case, but I won't talk about it anymore because none of it makes sense to me. And I'm not even going to go down a rabbit hole and speculate on things. I have my own opinions on things right now. And strange. That's all I will say. Strange and horrific. Let's get into Yuri and Leo's conversation. All right. So, a little backstory. If you hadn't heard Yuri's experience or the experience that he shared with us, yesterday's first upload. Now, a little bit of information on Leocado. And he's 58 years old, born and raised in this area, Campeche. His father is from the area of Coba, Mexico. His grandfather and great-grandfather are also lived in this region of Coba, Mexico. Very isolated and rural region in Mexico. Very interesting. I do have to let you know. It's in the Tulum municipality. It's a very beautiful area. And it is tropical rainforest jungle all around it. There are a few main roads, 109, and a couple other roads that run through to get there. It is a tourist attraction now, this area. But Coba has a history, and Dogmen are part of that history, on top of other very interesting cryptids. There is rumored to be aquatic cryptids similar to crawlers, which kind of now I know why I don't like water except my shower and an occasional pool. And there is supposedly sightings of Nephilim. And when I say Nephilim, I mean the real Nephilim, not a giant. There's a difference. We talked about it on the live, and I explained the difference. It is biblically and scientifically explainable. There is a difference. A Nephilim and their descendants have supernatural powers. A giant is just big. There has been giants in bones spotted and found everywhere throughout the world. There's a tribe in Africa somewhere that are like bones found 12 feet, which falls into that Nephilim height. It was like 12 to 18 feet. So anyway, Coba sits in this middle of this tropical rainforest jungle. And it is literally in the middle of the Yucatan Peninsula, like right up in there. There's two lakes or Laguna Coba and Laguna Mechanic, which are lakes. Coba, the town, is surrounded by, or Laguna Coba sits in the middle of both towns. It's almost like a U. So you got part of the town here, part of the town here, and the lagoon sits right here, or Laguna Lake, and then Laguna Macanaco or Macanac sits right here. There are 2,000-year-old pyramids in this area. There are unexplored pyramids and unexplored cave systems. Also, there are cave systems that have their own kind of aquatic life. So just to set the stage for you, you've got a touristy kind of attraction for archaeologists and people that like to explore. I would love to go to this place. I would probably be in heaven, minus the heat and humidity, but I think it would be amazing. Minus what goes on. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this area. This area that we're going to talk about is called Macanchac. It's a Mayan word, Laguna Macanchac. It's a Mayan word. There is literally no proper English way of pronouncing the word. There's 25 different pronunciations of this word. So Macanchac is a significant part of the Coba site in Mexico. In this area, Coba is known for its 3 large unexplored pyramids, numerous altars, and 8 carved stelae, some which are difficult to discern due to erosion. The site is also notable for its network of stone causeways and stelae that document ceremonial life and important events. So imagine finding this in the middle of this jungle. Unexplored pyramids, unexplored cave systems, unexplored water cave systems. And then there's these stelae that depict different things. And there are depictions of dogmen and other kinds of cryptids, giants as well, or Nephilim. So Leocadio, 58 years old, and he grew up in this region. His father worked with or for the Mennonite. When he was a little boy, he would work with his father. They would harvest trees for Mennonite, and the few of the Amish family that did go with the Mennonites to Mexico when they did their voyage. It's just so weird. You don't think of Mennonite and Amish in Mexico. it's like, they used to harvest trees, wood for the Mennonite / Amish folks that are there. And so they could create, they're expert woodworkers. Upstairs, I have this beautiful coffee table that was created by the Amish in Pennsylvania. And it's like a 150-year-old barrel that they turned into a coffee table. It's literally my favorite thing. So harvesting this wood, his father used to tell him of stories that his grandfather and his grandfather's grandfather used to have, or grandfather's father used to, when they were living in this region. And he was told from an early age that when in this jungle, to keep his father within eyesight, and if he was ever to lose that eyesight from his dad, like even if his dad went around a tree just to do something, yell his father's name, not dad, or yell his name, and wait for his response, which would be Leo Cato's name. Like, we'll just call him Leo. Like I said, it's a very old, ancient name that is not used. Mexican people do not name their children this very often. But he is as a form of respect to his lineage. The reason being is if he was to ever lose sight of his dad, to yell his name, and when he got the response of his name back, and his father would try to look for him and to keep saying his father's name until he could lay eyes on him again, because that there is supposedly some sort of demonic creature that will answer, like if you said, "Dad, where are you?" or the Mexican, I never took Spanish, I took Latin, so pater was father, so frater or whatever. It would respond, "I'm here, son. Come to me." But this way, it wouldn't know his name. Nor would it realize that, hey, you're calling, who are you calling for, So it wouldn't, chances are it wouldn't respond back. I guess his grandfather had been in the jungle with Leo's father and his father's brothers. There was 3 brothers. Leo's dad, and he had 2 brothers, so 3 kids, and a little brood of girls. There's like 6 children in total. He had not shared this information with his kids, and the 3 boys were out helping his grandfather harvest wood, harvest tree, and all of a sudden, one of them had gotten lost. Apparently, he had walked off to possibly use the bathroom. And that is not known why he walked off. It is not known. His father doesn't know why. The last he remembers was he was walking to his grandfather. His father and his brothers were walking to his grandfather, and they were all talking. And for some reason, when they got to their grandfather or their father, one of the brothers was missing. And he said, "Where is your brother?" And they kind of looked like, he's not here. They were having a conversation minutes prior to this.
they hear this earth-shattering scream, and the father takes both boys and hands them a axe for cutting timber, and like some sort of kind of carving tool, and hands them these tools and starts running. He says, do not move from this spot no matter what you hear. And you watch each other. You sit close to each other, and if anything other than myself comes, and if I come and you see me, when you see me, you say my name. And if I don't respond to you, to that name with both of your names, don't let me come near you, because it's not me. He goes and looks, and apparently just not very far away, he found his son completely just disemboweled, like violently attacked by some sort of creature. They saw claw marks as if something had scaled this tree. And it looked like it was trying to take him up the tree, because he must have screamed as he was getting attacked, and this thing was going up the tree with him, and he must have dropped him because there was like blood on the tree and stuff. So that was his first introduction to how dangerous this jungle is. And they do not have, there's not a name for this demonic creature. It is supposedly a demon, and they believe, to me it sounded like a shapeshifter, and some people are going to say skinwalker. No, a shapeshifter, something far stranger and much more dangerous. I believe you are dealing with some sort of ancient evil. Skinwalker is a Navajo name, Yenadalushi, black magic shaman practicing to change their shape to hunt the Ute. These Mayan temples, these Mayan villages, these just ancient 2,000-year-old pyramids are so... There's two different kinds of realities here. You've got almost modern day shape-shifting skinwalker in some sort of demonic Pazuzu, or you know what I mean? Like just something we don't even understand. And I know people are, I understand demons. You read the Bible, it'll tell you. Yes. I've read bits and pieces of the Bible. I love theology, but we don't understand any of it. It is so complex. So whatever this thing is, there is no depiction of it except for a person with a person that looks like it, you know, a petroglyph or hieroglyph, very similar, with this tail. That's how they put it. Like, so if it was me and then me, but my second me would have a tail, and that's how you would depict me, as this shape-shifting demonic creature. So that was his first introduction to how dangerous these jungles around Caba is, or Coba, Campeche, all in this Yucatan area where this massive forest or jungle is. Right, so that is just a little bit of what he has known of. There's a lot of stuff that he really shared with me, and it's just terrifying. 2020 or 2021, there is a group of Canadians who had gone down to the area. He does not remember the exact year. He just remembers that it was 4 or 5 years ago. Apparently,
these Canadians had come down to Coba and do a little bit of, admiring archaeology and the digs, and to check out some of these caves. There are these caves that are, people can swim in them. There's an actually, like, you can go, there's lights and such. So apparently these two Canadians had gone to this area pretty close to Coba, and they had decided that they were going to go swimming. Instead of going to the lakes that are right there, they were going to do this underground cave swimming. Now, there were about 5 in total. This is just from Leo's perspective and memory. Apparently 3 came out, and when they had contacted the police, police had gone, and they weren't even going to go in. They didn't even want to go into the water to recover the bodies. They didn't want any part of it. There was like a 2 to 3 day wait for the bodies to possibly surface, because they were last seen swimming. And next thing you know, they scream. One of the people had said that he had seen some sort of scrawny, kind of white, aquatic creature, very similar to what we call crawlers here, but this was in the water. They had been in this little swimming area in this cave, and they heard a splash, and then they heard another splash. They're looking around trying to figure out if the cave was coming in on them, and they see one of these things just jump off of the wall into the water. As that happens, they start swimming back to the opening, and where you can be on dry land. It's still underground, but I hate spelunking. I've spelunked 3 or 4 times in the Adirondacks, and it's terrifying. I cannot do it. I couldn't even swim. There's like, this is so dangerous. They're swimming and they hear their friends. The next thing they know, they are looking for their 2 friends, and they cannot find them. When they surface, and law enforcement eventually drags them out 2 to 3 days later, their bodies are mangled. There is supposedly no fish or any kind of life in these underground cave reservoirs, but how do you explain the brutality of these attacks? They're torn apart, essentially. The police make the announcement that the Zeta Cartel, or an offshoot of the Zeta, the Grupo Cartel, or Grupo Regional, were responsible for this, and they were shot. And Leo knows for a fact that they were not shot because he has friends that are in the police department and in the medical examiners, and it's not like here. This is a shit show for any kind of, medical analysis. And they were shredded. They were just torn apart. Supposedly, and this is just from what Leo said, that he had heard that law enforcement did to make it look like they had been executed by the cartel. And then they were pushed into the water. to cover it up. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that the Mexican policia would do something like that. They're probably just as corrupt as the cartel. And how, tourists died here, we got to cover our ass. We don't want the government, we don't want the American government coming down in here, we don't want the Canadian, and figuring out exactly what in the hell is down here. Or maybe, I'm positive that our government knows this shit's going down there. It's not, anytime these creatures are spotted, CIA contractors are on the spot, so then this Gropo offshoot of the Zeta apparently are running drugs, and they are setting up these manufacturing kind of in the middle of the jungle, these manufacturing sites where they just, manufacture meth, coke, whatever. There's probably 10 to 12 of these cartel members. They're employing the poverty people, the people that don't have anything, which is the majority of people down there, especially where this is. So they're watching and guarding the product, making sure that everything is done the proper way, and not caring about anything to do with the surrounding area. Well, apparently they were really close to one of these archaeological unexplored areas or causeways that lead to some sort of pyramid structure, and that they hear these like loud thumps and they feel a vibration as the workers are terrified. The cartel members are on edge because they've heard the legend, but they need to be paid. This is their job, so they've got guns, so let's do battle. Apparently they spot something that was somewhere between 15 to 18 feet in height. It was red-haired, and it did not have a beard. And that Leo brought that up immediately. He said it had long red hair, but it had no beard. He said, how did it not have beards, and it was wearing some sort of cloth-like shorts, not pants, short pants, no kind of covering on its chest, and it was white, like white, paper white, with this red hair, and the only hair on its body that was visible was its red hair. There was no kind of chest hair, there was no what appeared to be arm hair, no beard, nothing. So possibly it was unable to grow hair. Who knows? We know that Neanderthal, per Danny Van Drimeny, evolved during the Ice Age and grew a thick covering of fur/hair to protect them from the Ice Age, the European Ice Age. So, it makes sense. And he and I talked about that. I was like, well, maybe through geographic evolution, that is why this thing did not have it. Anyway, they see this thing, and what they see next is these humanoid dog creatures with it. And Leo said there was somewhere between, and he said, give or take, I was not there. I'm going off of what I heard from people who were there. Apparently there was a few people that had made it out of this region. There was like 6 to 8 of these 7-foot dogmen, and half the size of this monstrous humanoid creature. And instantly they started to fire in response to being terrified. As they are firing, these things are, running and killing the workers, the innocent. I mean, yeah, I guess they would be innocent if they're forced to make this drug. And these cartel members, this Grupo regional cartel from the Zeta, and a few of them just run, and they hear gunshots. They just hear, and then they hear these screams. One of the men that did escape said that he saw the giant / Nephilim, because it had some sort of supernatural powers, that when a few of their buddies were trying to run, for some reason they couldn't. They were stopped dead in their tracks and screaming that they could not move, stuck in the wood, in the jungle, just stuck. And as a few of them turned, they saw this thing, some sort of power or energy like stopping them in their place. And these dogmen proceeded to kill the workers, the cartel members. A day or two later, they go back. They're forced to go back by the head, and they do not find any of the bodies. Their manufacturing plant or site is destroyed. Millions of dollars of filthy drug is gone because of whatever occurred. And he said that he has shared this, with other members that he is friends with in these Mennonite communities, warning them, that they need to be cautious, not just of the cartel. And they immediately, ones that did accept it instantly, when they heard of this Nephilim-like monster creature and the dogmen were a demon, instantly demonic creatures protecting the offspring's offspring of the fallen angel. Probably 4, maybe 5 generations, or who knows? I mean, I don't know. But these are the offspring of the Nephilim, the offspring of the fallen angel, Nephilim. Then, however far you want to go back, Anakim, I believe they're Raphem and Anakim. There's a couple of other different names and regionally known as. So these things work, or were they created? I did an upload talking about how what if these dogmen were created to protect the fallen angels and protect the Nephilim, and maybe that is why. Because in the book of Enoch, the book of giants, we are told that not only did these things bed with the daughters of men and man, that they then did genetic modification and bred with other animals, or possibly geno-spliced these creatures. I mean, they are demonic, so they have the power to do this stuff. So what, just maybe, and this is one of those puzzle connections, that these things are the protector of the Nephilim. The fallen angels knew that, sooner or later God was going to get real pissed and needed to create something to protect its offspring and their offspring and their offspring, and used possibly DNA from the dog-headed alien / demon creatures that the Sumerian talked about. Oh, like I said, there were connections, and out of this 4-hour conversation that we were having, a lot of it was Yuri and I, with Leo, talking in a kind of broken Spanish / English. The second I found out that there were pyramids and that the Mayans were there, and these are 2,000-year-old Mayan pyramids and unexplored buildings, pyramids, and other things like that, I'm instantly brought back to other pyramids, the pyramids in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Egypt, all throughout, and if you think about the power that these things have, it would make sense that there would be strange creatures. You have in Egypt, you have multiple hieroglyphs of chimera, which would be a genetic creation created by these fallen angels. And I know people are going to be like, well, God can only create. No, that's not true. These things, and it is in the book of Enoch, and it is in the book of Giants, these fallen angels created by breeding with the daughter of man, and by breeding with animals, and by genetically altering these things somehow. We don't know how. It's in these ancient books, though. So they did create something. It was not pure. It was not good like us or anything else that's on this earth created by the one and only, and looked out for by Jesus. But these are evil. So there's a tie-in. The pyramids tie in. It's so just terrifying to think about. You've got these red-haired giants in Lovelock. You've got red-haired giants in Afghanistan. You've got red-haired giants in the Solomon Islands. You've got red-haired giants in Central America. You have giants and other creatures in Chile. There's a massive connection, and it cannot be denied. It cannot be overlooked anymore. These are unadulterated evil. These are demons. So, there's so many different puzzle pieces, connections right there. And then, in fact, were those people that were at the manufacturing site there in the woods with tarps and, not like a factory, but like some setup, were they killed because and I said, do you think they were attacked because they were polluting a sacred area? And Yuri and I started to have a back and forth, and Leo said something very interesting. He said, why would they care about a sacred area to the Mayans when, they wouldn't care? They only did it because that's what demons do. They cause pain. They kill. They're evil. And I was like, well, that shit, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I literally, Yuri and I had 30, 40-minute conversation about why they attacked like that. Obviously get fired on by bunch of guys with guns and you are some sort of demonic creature, you're going to attack anyway. But they were probably attacked because that's what they do. Or just like Dogman in North America, we hear about these, why do dogmen occasionally kill and why don't they normally? Why is there so many cases of them, just causing terror and kind of smiling, that dog-like smile when they're leaving? Because demons enjoy to cause terror, to cause pain. There's no other explanation for it. They are evil. Just evil. This is Leo's experience. Leo had met Yuri, and he had been and agreed to bring some lumber to Yuri and to some of the people that Yuri knows, so they could build whatever kinds of things that they sell. So he's there's like a national park, Paracu National Park, and it's right on the ocean. It's right above Campeche. So he's in this national reserve or park, Paracu. He is harvesting wood for Yuri and Yuri's family and friends. Being that Campeche is right south of where he is, or where he intended on getting the wood from, rather than in an area where it was illegal to, he was illegally harvesting wood in this national kind of reserve area. He had been working all day and diligently. He had a few workers with him using rudimentary hand tools, essentially. A chainsaw, obviously, but they don't have skid steers and stuff like loggers in America have. So it's getting to be dark and it's time to settle in. He's got this kind of kerosene lamp with him that he's carrying, going back to their tent, which was just a tarp suspended in some trees and some cots that they were sleeping on. He and another guy had checked their timber that they had harvested, and we're talking about how they're going to get it back to where it needs to be without getting caught and this and that, and coming up with an idea, maybe cutting it smaller than what it is. And as they are walking back to the camp, they're probably a couple 100 feet from their camp area, which is, you're in the jungle, that's some miles, it's, you can't see your camp. They hear a growl, this just deep, terrifying growl. Instantly they think dog, or some other kind of jungle creature. As they turn to look, he's got this kind of like old lamp, and he turns and looks at what is standing in front of them or behind them, and he immediately sees these yellowish eyes just in the shadows, and it's still growling, this just really loud, terrifying growl. And it makes this weird kind of bark / gnashing of its teeth, like when a dog really gets mad and it's gonna bite, that bark it does before it bites, and you can hear the teeth gnash. And he
anticipated this thing was going to come running after that noise. And the other guy that was with Leo at the time had like this really crappy piece of crap flashlight. And they're both kind of turned and looked at this. He's got his little flashlight on it, and Leo's got this lamp. And he doesn't know what else to do. They don't have firearms on them. They don't even have any of their working tools with them. And he throws this lamp, and it smashes on its chest, like your region. And he recalls, he said it was almost instantaneous that when it smashed, the fire just went, and he could smell hair burning, he could smell flesh, and it was yiping and enraged all at the same sense. It actually contemplated on still charging at them. They have nothing. He just threw this thing. It's on fire and spreading because it's flammable, and it's spreading down this creature because it's dripping all over it. And it contemplated on charging at them. He recalls it, like, he said it thought about it. He said, I could see it in its eyes that it thought about coming. It still thought about coming no matter how much pain it was in. And it just took off running. It turned and took off running, and all they could see was this flame. And he never saw it again. They went back to their camp. They stayed up all night. They had hand tools in their hands, machetes, these axes, these carving kind of adze or whatever they're called, tools. And you're not going to fight a freaking Dogman with a chainsaw, but they had all their tools, and they stayed awake until they could get out of there in the morning. So at least they would have a heads up if one of these things came back for revenge, or if that one did. He does not think that it survived the night because it was a blaze of fire when it was running. So crazy, and you think about where Yuri's friends and people he know that had that experience with that Dogman that pretty much wiped out a family of Mennonite in Campeche, and this thing's right there. So connections, yeah, I think so. These things are running wildly through the jungles and unchecked. At least up here, running through the Appalachia, we got some good old boys with some good old firearms. In the Adirondacks, a totally different world down there. It was absolutely insane. Okay, so that was all the information that Yuri and Leo shared with me. Leo is going to be going out towards Coba. He's in Campeche now on the Yucatan. But he said within the next couple of months, he's going to go up there and visit with his family that lives up there. He said he'd try and get some pictures and videos for us of some of the things that he talked about, like that cave with the water swimming area, and the one area where the manufacturing campsite thing was, and some of the pyramids as well. Because you can look it up online when we were talking, and I'm looking at images of it, but you can't get a real feeling of it. One, there is no height comparison and stuff unless you're there. So, Leo, Yuri, thank you. I appreciate all of your information, and truly two amazing dudes, and thank you once again. There you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is, after all, your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.